Look, if you look at the pure LCC view of the world, they tend to think of it that way. We, in the last couple of years, have sort of changed our direction and realised that a commoditized product is potentially a risky product, that if someone else comes in with exactly the same product, the only loyalty is price. And if the only loyalty is price, you're not going to hold on to your customers for too long. So I think there are some airlines and some management that still think that way, but we've tried to move off in a slightly different direction. Pan Am started it all with the 707, and they introduced mass transport, and that changed the way. And from that point forward, we started to look at cost cutting as opposed to revenue-driven models to a large degree. And then at the time, we had a lot of flag carriers who were government controlled and owned, and they thought they knew what the customer wanted, so they gave the customer what they thought was important. They weren't really thinking from the perspective of the customer. So I think from that perspective, we've gone, we're now moving away from that, because a lot of these airlines are now being more focused on the fact that, hang on, isn't the customer the person that pays my salary, who lets my kids go to school, that puts the dinner on the table? And those airlines that are starting to think like that, I think, are going to be leap years ahead of those airlines that are still in the traditional thinking. I think the traditional business model is changed. I wouldn't say it's dead. I mean, the LCC purists would think I'm nuts for what we've done in terms of moving away from just the one aircraft type for a start. But I think the market, our secret to our success, and I think it's the secret what every management team should be looking at, is how do you maintain relevance? It comes back to what I said earlier. It's no use giving what you think the customer wants. You've got to give what the customer wants. And the only way to do that is to actually look and talk to them and look at it from their perspective. So I think there are opportunities in emerging markets to perhaps have a different model, which might be more price-driven than say, in a more mature model like Australia, where you know, we believe very much that the customer or the guest, as we call them, is going to be always right. So we need to have a different view of the world than someone who just says, here's an idea, here's a model that's cheap as chips. Let's all focus, as I said, on cost, a cost-driven model. We're now a revenue-driven model, which is a 360 or 180-degree turn from what the pure LCC guys would be telling you is the right way to run a business. About 2 or 3 years ago, we were the only game in town compared to our major competitor, Qantas, and we were going along pretty well. And then they set up their own company-sponsored low-cost carrier to compete against us, which was fine. So they started to encroach on our lunch, so to speak, and we felt if they're going to steal a bit of our lunch, we might take a bit of Qantas's dinner. And by that, we were thinking that, well, why couldn't we look to be more revenue-focused? As I said before, being cost-focused is good where you're the only game in town, which we were the only LCC in Australia. When we got into a competitive dogfight, I started to think that, well, hang on, if price is going to be the only loyalty, we're going to be in a form of commercial trench warfare with these guys forever and a day, and no one's going to win out of that. So our idea was to say, there are other elements to passenger loyalty beyond price, and if you can get a revenue model that has a product that they're prepared to pay a little bit more for, or that they think is heading in the right direction, or is more me and represents what I'm all about, you know, that's probably not a bad place to be. So we coined this phrase, New World Carriage, which was saying, why can't we have the best of both worlds? A very low cost base, but allowing people the choice to trade up and get pretty much what they might get with a traditional or a legacy carrier. So we're all about saying, low cost, let's target the high yield. And, you know, coming back to it, you know, the average frequent flyer who flies between, say, 2 capital cities in Australia will pay 7 or 8 times more than a deeply discounted ticket. I kind of like those folks. So our objective and our focus has been over the last few years to say, how do we get more of those people on board? And that's where New World Carrier is I think it's a new hybrid, but, you know, our results have proven that it's been the right, you know, strategy for us to pursue. It all comes back to meeting their expectations, and I'm a strong believer that if we can do things that have minimal cost, or if not minimal cost, they actually are a choice to the guest, then that's a great area to pursue. Jamming people in and putting in 29-inch seat pitch and putting in, you know, 4 abreast if you can get away with it, you know, if you could legally or regularly get away with it, is not what in our market people really want. So yes, there are tremendous values in looking at things, whether it's size of cabin, size of seat, you know, room between pitch and things of that nature. So to answer your question, there are separate markets, but for the market that we're pursuing and the market that we think is the most profitable in this country, we believe we need to be a little bit special, and so those things are important. I've always been a believer that that our guests have paid not for getting from Sydney to actually getting to Melbourne. They've paid for the experience, and the experience starts when they make that first call to our call centre or check in through the net, and it should be part of that experience of the journey. And look, there's a lot of romance has gone out. It was a very wonderful industry once upon a time, but I don't think the romance has to have gone entirely. And we go out of our way to make sure that it's just as important the experience on the ground as it is in the air, as it is the choice of aeroplane. And we make very important decisions based on all those touch points along the way. And so, I come full circle and say, at the end of the day, you've got to be relevant for your market, and you've got to be able to meet their needs and expectations. And the customer today is very much more expectant than he was in one point in time. And so everything from making sure that we check you in within 3 minutes to getting you on the plane without too many hassles, to ensuring that you've got a comfortable seat and that you can buy what you want, you can upgrade to more room on the aeroplane if you want. All those things have got to be empowered to the guest, and so the success for us has been that we have sold a journey and not just getting a person in a seat from A to B. It's every single touch point is important to us. Price alone isn't the only criteria. It obviously comes down to operating economics. It comes down to passenger appeal. We very much believe that if you can sell an experience and sell something that is better than your competitors, you will get a yield premium for it. I have no doubt that the product we offer today, compared to other low-cost carriers, we extract quite a significant yield premium. You've got to look at the whole package. Price is but one of the constituent parts.